Hello, John Britt here. Today we're going to make a one-piece plaster mold, and so we got a lot to do. So here's the first thing you do. We're going to make something like this. These are things I've modeled out of a magazine that I like, the Egyptian owl. And here's like a ram that I've modeled. So that's what we're going to make. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to model this. Then we want to make a caudal to hold the plaster. One method is to use this is aluminum flashing, which I sort of folded into the shape that it needs to be, like this. And I can just push it down on there. And then I can duct tape it to hold it. Another more traditional way is to use a Caudal System where you just screw a board on there. Then these can be moved to any distance you want. And then you just use a clamp to clamp them into place. But I don't use any of those. For what I got going here, I try to use plastic Tupperware containers, Tupperware, but just plastic. And so I'll put my piece in there, and now I already have a caudal for it, ready to go. Okay, so now what we got to do is estimate how much plaster we need to pour in there. And so some people measure the length and the width and the height, but what I do is I just sort of estimate. So I can see this is going to take about 2 containers and about this high. So I double that. So I can get about this much. And so what that means is when I pour plaster in there, it'll sort of almost double the volume. Okay? So now what we have to do is mix it up. So we can put, there's several ways, and here's a good book on plaster making if you want, or this Frith book. And then here is the ratios if you like precision, like you would use a water and pounds of plaster. Some people use a weight method, 3 pounds of plaster to 2 pounds of water. And the way you go about doing that is, what I've done here is I've taken a container and I've weighed out 454 grams of plaster, and then I marked it and I cut it. So now anytime I scoop in here, I get a pound of plaster. Okay? If you want to do a pound of water, you can do the same thing, and then all you do is you take a razor knife and cut some holes in there, and then when you put water in here, you can see that if it's too much, it'll just spill out. So now we have a pound of water here, okay? But I don't really use either of those methods. I'm just showing you those methods. Right now I'm going to put in it's going to be about 4 cups of water, so it's a quart of water, and then I'll need to put in the plaster. Now I have a mask here, which I will wear to just try to minimize dust inhalation. Okay, now before I do it, normally what I'll do is I will put, I'll use a sieve like this, and then I can put it in there, and I can sift it in like this, okay? But for our purposes today, I'm not going to do that because it'll take too long. Okay. Alright, now we don't have to worry too much about the dust. Now, you can see that I did a little over 2 of these because I was supposed to be doing 2 pounds and 14 ounces. And so I put that in there. Now, the normal method that I would use would be called the mountain method, where you just keep putting it in until it forms islands or mountains in the water there. I wanted to do it this way so you could see the correct way, how much water is there. It's pretty, you can still see it's pretty fluid. So I've got about a ½ an inch or an inch of water so there's no mountains there. Okay, now what I'll do is do it my normal way. And I usually start this by putting some Vaseline on my hand so that I don't get it all over. And you can see I have paper here so I don't spill it. Now what I'll do with this mountain method is just keep adding some on there like that. So you don't even have to weigh or do anything. You can use this method. Okay, so that's enough plaster. And I can let that sit for up to like 20 minutes without disturbing it, and it will not set up. But as soon as I mix it, then I got about 15 minutes or so. Now some people mix with their hands. I like to mix with a mixer. You do it any way you want. I just put my mixer in. And then that's it. I have a bucket of water here that I can clean everything off immediately. Now I've got my plaster. I don't have to rush because this is, if it was bad plaster, it would set up immediately. But I can just let this sit and the bubbles will come right up. Then I'm good to go. Now what I'll do is I'll come to my mold and this is a mineral oil, and I'll just make sure I have enough oil on the sides to make sure that it doesn't stick too bad. This is brand new, so it won't stick. Now when I pour it in from the side like this, and when I get it about like this, I can tap it down. I'll put some on the top where I want good detail and no bubbles, and that's when I'll use my brush to kind of brush it in, make sure everything gets in there. Some people do a splash coat where they splash it on, but this way is also very effective and simple. And then you can see that I've gotten that just about right, and I'll just tap that a little. Might as well use the rest up. Okay, so just tap that around, and then that's all I'll do. Then I'll clean everything up. And that's how to make a one-piece mold. All right, make about 25 of those for tomorrow, and we'll see you.